This interview was recorded at the Psychedelic Science 2025 in Denver, where we spoke with leading voices in psychedelic research, therapy, spirituality and policy. Charlotte Durr James is a medicine woman, educator and the founder of Psychedelic Liberation training. With Afro-Caribbean and Germanic ancestry, her work weaves ancestral healing, social justice, embodiment and plant medicine. In our conversation, she speaks about liberation-informed care, the power of ritual, and how to bring accountability and integrity into psychedelic spaces. Charlotte, you have Afro-Caribbean and Germanic descent. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a very interesting lineage. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me the story of your family?
Yeah, so my grandmother, Helen Palmer, immigrated from Jamaica in the 1970s and landed in Philadelphia, which is where I grew up. And she later brought over her 5 children, my father, Otmar James, being the eldest of 5. And he met my mom, Ginny Dewar, who is a 3rd generation German. So the German lineage piece is a bit further back, and I have to do a little bit more digging there. But I've always had a very clear soul calling towards my African ancestry and Afro-Caribbean culture, and so that's sort of the path that I've traveled more deeply in my medicine work.
And reconnecting with your ancestors plays an important role in your life, right?
It's a huge...
Why is it so important for you?
You know, when I really think about what my beliefs are, for a long time, I joke that I'm a recovering atheist. But what has always been true and known to me is that I come from a line, and someone and something came before me and something will come after me. And it always just felt like this innate knowing to honor our ancestors, and this idea that this knowing that we walk with a pack of support behind us at all times. As I've gone deeper into my medicine path and work, I had the honor and privilege of initiating in Gabon into Mabanji, which is a part of Iboga traditions. And that really helped me solidify this knowing that honoring our ancestors is an important part of how we reclaim our power.
So this pack is sometimes not only support but trauma as well, right?
It can
How
be trauma.
How do we deal with trauma?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the beautiful thing of working with these medicines is that they really help us to unpack a lot of that trauma, to really become aware of how it's impacting us still, thinking about the ways in which the experiences and the characteristics and the trauma of our ancestors lives on in our bodies, you know? Our bodies keep the score beyond just this lifetime, but for many lifetimes. And working with these medicines helps us, many of them help us to unpack a lot of that and to reclaim our own place in our lineage.
What was the first time or moment in your life when you realized that your life will be a spiritual life, that healing and teaching is your call?
You know, as I go through or I arrive more into my path and I remember more of my sacred memory becomes available to me, I can't really find the one moment. It's more of I have seen it as a becoming. Though I will say maybe a decade ago, you know, I have been, this year will be my 20-year drug anniversary. So my first experiences were with cannabis, and my father had been a Rastafari. I had heard about cannabis as a plant and a medicine for my whole life. And so when I had the opportunity to try cannabis for the first time, Mama Ganja, I said yes very excitedly, and that opened the door to other medicines to come into my life. But a decade ago was the first time I had a journey with the little teachers or sacred mushrooms. And early in that journey, there was this insight that part of my work would be to share this medicine with others. So I'd say that was the first moment. There wasn't a clarity of how, and then the past decade has been sort of putting that together.
So you are an initiated medicine woman. Can you explain us what a medicine woman is and how you became one?
I am an initiate in a tradition, though I don't work with the medicine of that tradition with others. I would say I'm a medicine carrier. I consider my role to be like an assistant of the medicine. You know, the mushrooms, they walk in their own way through the earth, but they need the human assistance to help spread their message. I don't really think that there is, it's interesting being at this conference, I don't really think that there's like a pathway. It's not a career pathway, you know? It's being a medicine carrier is not a career, and it gets really jumbled up in this psychedelic industry, right? Where you can take a training and get a piece of paper that says you have become this thing. When you ask me when did I know that I would do this work, for me it's a becoming. And so it's not one training, it's not one moment, but it's a lifetime of following the little clues of magic from, I call them the ancestral breadcrumbs. So following the ancestral breadcrumbs to the awareness of the need for us to have medicine carriers in our communities.
Do you have a kind of favorite plant medicine or plant teacher in your life?
No, that's like asking me if I have like a favorite grandparent, you know, like, or a favorite elder, or.
You also funded the Psychedelic Liberation training.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain us what is it about?
Yeah, the Psychedelic Liberation training is a program for psychedelic practitioners who want to be stewards of healing justice. So my perspective is really that we have the opportunity to work with these medicines to, as we talked about, heal intergenerational trauma, but also to remember what it is to move through the world with radical love and to remember our humanness together. And so we have a 10-week training that's focused on decolonization, the intersection of decolonization work, liberation psychology, transpersonal psychology, and then entheogenic shamanism or plant medicine work. And we bring all of these elements together to guide practitioners through this unlearning and relearning process around the conditioning that we each carry in this world that helps to replicate violence and harm and hatred, and what it means to really support our communities in confronting those hard truths, those shadow parts of our collective, and helping to clear them out with the support of ancestral reclamation and sacred medicine.
You speak about decolonization. How can we track back the heritage of colonization in this field in psychedelic medicine?
You know, unfortunately, much of this resurgence is built on extraction, right? The extraction of culture and material. I do believe that there are really healthy ways that we can engage in cultural exchange of information and medicine and healing modalities. But what I see happening a lot in this space is a replication of the practices and the system of colonization, of going to other people's lands to take from them, to overconsume these medicines without the reverence that it really requires to be in a relationship with the plants and the land that they come from. And I still have hope for all of us, or I wouldn't be doing this work. But I do find it really supportive for people to become more aware of what that process of colonization was, through history, how we've arrived to this moment, and how we can each take responsibility for not replicating those characteristics of colonization and oppression within ourselves, like in the way, really starting with the way that we relate to ourselves, dethroning the empire within ourselves, and then helping to do that throughout the collective.
I hear a lot about trauma-informed care recently, but you also wrote about liberation-informed care.
You really did your research.
Yeah, I did. Can you explain us how can a therapist be a liberation-informed?
You know, there's a long history of liberation psychology. That's really the sort of godfather of liberation psychology is Ignacio Martín Barro. And I feel that liberation-informed care encompasses trauma-informed care, but also helps us to refocus towards ancestrally centered care and earth-based care and relational and community-based care. So I see it more as an umbrella of all of these pieces that we need to find our way back to value-aligned community building and value-aligned community care.
So psychedelic treatment is often about like mystical experiences and, you know, like a unified consciousness, but we also should speak about like the separation by race and ethnicities and cultures and sex and gender. So how do we reconcile this, you know, separateness and unity at the same time?
I really find that I'm really grateful to my teachers who have shared non-dualistic teachings with me that I think help us to hold these two truths, right? In the Buddhist tradition, we know of these two truths, these two realities, right? Where, and Ruth King says in paraphrasing, you know, in this space, I'm a Afro-descendant, Germanic descendant, cisgendered, biracial Black woman, etc. Right? I could use all of this terminology to describe myself. In ultimate reality, I am essence, right? Like I am the tree and the river and the stone and the person sitting across from me, right? And I find that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with having more of that awareness. And also that all of these beings, seen and unseen, can remind us of our interdependence and can remind us of our collective existence and that we have a responsibility towards each other and towards the earth.
So my understanding is that being aware of our differences can also lead us back to our unified consciousness.
Absolutely. I that's one of the agreements that I always share at the beginning of psychedelic liberation training is we're here to honor our differences, not to put them in a hierarchy of value, right? That's really where I think we get lost as a species, is that we want to assign hierarchies of value to identity. And really, I'm just here to honor that we're all these different expressions of spirit. And we can celebrate those differences without that leading to an expansion of our separation.
So you, in your work, you had a lot of like rituals, like collective methods of healing. Can you talk about that? Like, how does it look like?
One of my favorite authors is Malidoma Somé, and he talks about ritual needs to be created for the people and the place in which the thing is happening, right? And so when I think about ritual, I'm thinking about there are always the structures that you have, the container that you create for ritual and for ceremony to take place, but then each ritual can be so different depending on what the needs of that community are. But things like getting back into a practice of honoring the cycles, like the simple cycles of the earth, the moons and the equinoxes and the solstices, the simple act of making offerings back to the earth, like just having this awareness that nature is not separate from us, and that we have a responsibility to be in co-creation with each other and with all beings to honor and take care of the earth.
So how do you feel about the more westernized way of psychedelic treatment, with this talking therapy in more traditional settings? Is it something we have to overcome, or is it something that can coexist with what you are speaking about?
I think they can coexist. I think it takes many pathways to the work, because there are many people who are going to watch this interview or look at how other people do this work in a less not medicalized way and never be, or maybe not be ready to step into something like that. Like they need a different type of container and a different type of care. So I used to have a much sort of harsher perspective on this, but I really feel it's going to take many doorways to get us to this awareness. And at the same time that, especially here in the United States, our medical industry is an industry of harm predominantly, right? It's not really an industry that centers care. And so I have concerns of the way in which that harm then is replicated in psychedelic care and psychedelic assisted therapy. So I think it's important that we stay a little vigilant around how much we allow this to turn into just another pharmaceutical tool.
A lot of people are also concerned about growing commercialization and spiritual materialism in this field.
Mm-hmm.
How can we make sure that people can trust those guides and service providers who are in the field? Is there any way we can maybe regulate this?
I think going back kind of old school is and using word of mouth. Like even when this is being brought forth in a more medicalized context, working with providers that you could working with providers that you've heard of from other people that you trust. Really that word of mouth piece. I know that's hard for many people, and there's also a lot of, this is where we get into this conversation of how colonization, the characteristics of colonization are replicated in this space. There's a lot of rushing, right? Like people I want it now. I want instant gratification and it to be a magic pill. And I always suggest to slow down and really take your time in finding the practitioner, whether they're clinical or ceremonial, that is going to care about you and care about your well-being and can hold that experience with you.
The theme of the conference is integration. A lot of people are very excited about psychedelics and mystical experiences, but maybe they are not so much aware of the importance of integration. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about why do we need integration?
Mm-hmm. For me, the preparation and integration are like offerings that we make to the process. We really cannot expect these medicines to work like magic pills. Like it is a co-creation of us with the medicine, and we have to put our work in as well. And when you don't focus on integration, psychedelics can become a lot of escapism, and sort of an amusement park for your mind to go on these fun journeys and trips. But when we really put that focus and intention towards it, then we're able to draw so much insight and really start to embody the lessons of the medicine in our relationships and in our communities and in the way that we engage with ourselves, But that takes time, and it takes a lot of practice, and we exist in a time of a lot of instant gratification. So, I think this is a great space to do some of that shadow work around how quickly we want results, right? And what does it mean to be more in a relationship with our own healing journey?
What would you recommend to those people who are stuck in their lives and they are considering to try some kind of psychedelic treatments? What would you recommend to them?
Find community.
If they are not sure that they are the right person to do this.
Find community. Find your local psychedelic society. Find a friend to talk to about. Don't keep yourself in isolation trying to figure out this decision. If you're into it and you're a little wooey, talk to your guides, talk to your ancestors, and ask what is the next step to take. But I really think above all else is look for community, and that will help you to then find the people who can really support your journey. And then it also doesn't make it just about psychedelics. I don't think that psychedelics in and of themselves are they are a healing tool and assistant, but they require all of this other support around the preparation and the integration and the embodiment. So finding community is a great way to ensure that you're moving from a place of integrity while you and the medicine find each other.
There was a psychiatrist who said that only if I could convince my patients to forgive themselves, 80% of them would go home from the hospital tomorrow. Does it resonate with you?
Yeah. That's why I really feel like the decolonization work has to start with ourselves, not in an egoic way, and not in getting ourselves in those loops of shame and guilt and judgment. But the importance of forgiving yourself is really profound. A lot of my own healing journey began around that question, actually. And this thought that I needed to forgive others, and the help to direct me to recognize that yes, that may be part of it, but really that it's more this relationship that I cultivate with myself every day.
How do you see this field, the psychedelic field, in the future, like in 10 years maybe? Do you expect any breakthroughs?
I hope that it is more liberation informed and more ancestrally centered and more indigenous and elder centered. We see it here, and that is beautiful. But it comes back to this question of embodiment, right? We see it here, but then how is it carried out through the work on a day-to-day basis? How is it baked into the way that we relate to each other and the way that we approach reciprocity? So that's my hope, that we continue to get more grounded.
Okay. And what can you tell to those people who would like to try psychedelic liberation training? How can they get engaged?
Yeah, you can find us at liberation.training. We'll be opening a new cohort in September 2025. And we'll go on a journey all together to find the way that we steward collective liberation in this time.